When you hear the word typecast, do you cringe? Maybe you imagine being trapped in one role forever? But what if I told you that the thing you're afraid of could actually be your superpower? Today, I'm showing you why typecasting isn't evil, why I call it brand instead, and how you can steer it in your favor. This is Casting Actors Cast.
Casting actors cast, oh what a show! With Jeffrey Dreisbach, we're ready to go. From agents to gigs, learn what you lack. Tune in every week, we're bringing you back.
We're going to kick off the show right after this. Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of Casting Actors Cast. You know what? The word typecasting gets tossed around a lot, but let's be honest, it's outdated. Really is. Back in the 1920s through the 1940s and even the 50s, studios would sign actors under contract and they would lock them into the same role over and over again because audiences liked it. If you played the cowboy once, congratulations, you were playing cowboys forever. That's what I call typecasting. But guess what? Today's industry is completely different. Writers are creating layered, fascinating, deep characters in unusual situations. That's because I believe audiences crave complexity. And as actors, you have more influence than ever before on how you're being perceived. That's why I don't use the word typecasting. I prefer brand. Your brand is how people experience you, both in audition rooms and on the screen. And here's the good news. Unlike typecasting, you can actually have control over your brand. So we're going to bust some myths, reveal what brand really means for actors today, and show you how to take charge of your own story. But first, this is that moment of the podcast where I want to say thank you for tuning in to Casting Actors Cast. It's been an absolute pleasure bringing these podcasts to you. I have been excited to share this information for several years now. I'm happy to say that the audience continues to grow exponentially. I am grateful for the Broadway Podcast Network for putting me on. I'm also really grateful for the attention that my website has received. The website's castingactorscast, all one word, .com. There you're going to find all kinds of information, including a book I wrote called Booked It, the Actor's Playbook for Getting Cast. Also, you'll see a video course that's available on auditioning. There's a form that says dive into the talent pool, and if you do that, it's going to open up a whole bunch of stuff. One is a book on doing voiceover work. The other is a video called Casting Secrets, What They Don't Tell You. In addition to that, you're going to find past episodes of Casting Actors Cast so you can catch up on that. And also, you're going to find Jeff's Jots, hello, can I say that? The corresponding show notes for each of the episodes that you're listening to. So it's a downloadable PDF, so you can print out the information or the material just to have it, just to review it, should you find something useful that might need to be reread over and over again. Anyway, that's how you do that. Casting Actors Cast, all one word.com. Here's my shout out to my good friends at Actors Connection, by the way. I'm doing a really fun class rather, not a course, it's a class on what we call the hallmark of rom-coms. What I mean by that is that because our office is cast for Hallmark movies. Now, despite what you think about Hallmark movies, they're incredibly popular, and we like doing them because it really gives us an opportunity to bring some newcomers in the business into this arena, and it gives them some pretty decent footage sometimes. So it's been a lot of fun, and the Hallmark people are very, very kind, good, professional folks. So my shout out to them as well. All right, let's jump into this. So we have the old studio system, as I mentioned in the tease. So I think the best thing to do is give a historical snapshot. So imagine the studio system of the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. They controlled actors' careers. We're talking about Paramount, Warner Brothers, MGM. Actors like Shirley Temple, Humphrey Bogart, and John Wayne became symbols of a single kind of role. Writers wrote those types because audiences wanted familiarity and they liked these actors. So, what you need to know is that actors at that time really didn't have any control. They might have had control as they got super famous, but just in terms of the distribution of roles that actors played, there were stock characters being written. So the shift to modern storytelling was the change that took place because today's writing focuses on unique characters in what I consider complex and diverse circumstances. Uh, what are you watching today? What has captivated your interest on any of those streaming services? And those new scripts that we're receiving in our office are very complex, very interesting. There's a lot of psychological thrillers, there's horror, there's all kinds of really amazing stories. It's almost like writers are outdoing themselves in the psychological department. There's also other examples to point to. For example, Viola Davis in How to Get Away with Murder. Now, that character, if you saw it, was a powerful yet flawed, layered character. And she or her character wasn't tied to a type. That's the important takeaway. Because writers, they now create characters that audiences can, well, relate to and be surprised by in both a positive and a negative way. That's interesting. That's stimulating for those audiences. So I think the key point here is that the opportunities for actors are far more varied. And so when you're asking the question, and I get this question frequently when I say I don't use the word type, typecasting, in my mind, is limiting. It shows the actor being boxed into a certain category. And also, it's something that others will put on you, the actor. That's lack of control. On the other hand, I think the word brand is a much stronger, better choice because it reflects how you're being perceived. And guess what? The qualities that you consistently bring to your work is unique to you. And also, you have control over that. The audience's emotional connection to you is what we are responding to given the material that we have today. So you see, that's something you have control over, is how you're being perceived by others is important information for the actor, but that's also something that can change. See, actors can steer their brand in whatever direction they feel is most appropriate and useful for their career. So that means we have to understand the brand. We have to understand what others notice first about you as an actor. And this is a little challenging sometimes for actors to understand, I think, in my experience. It's your essence, your presence, your energy, your personality, all of those physical traits and physiological traits that you bring to the table becomes your uniqueness. What happens when I suggest actors that you know, like Tom Hanks? What do you think of? Well, clearly you got that image in your mind, something that is warm, that Tom Hanks is relatable. He's kind of an everyman. We can all relate to where he's coming from. Here's another one. When you think of Zendaya, boy, strength, cool intelligence, adaptability. See, your brand isn't what you say it is. It's also what the industry perceive. But guess what? You still have control over that. I guess my key point about this is being aware. Awareness is your power. Being aware of how you're being perceived by others will help demonstrate your ability to be malleable, ooh, good word, when needed. We're going to talk about steering your brand. How do you stay in control of your brand? And actually, how does this come together? Right after this. Welcome back. We're talking about type versus brand, and I don't use the word type. It's about your brand, and steering your brand really comes down to, in my opinion, a self-assessment. Self-assessment. Here's how you do that. And I've done this for my students many, many classes over many, many years. And that is, I want the class to write down 3 adjectives of each of their classmates. And the adjectives, and they're anonymous. So the adjectives can be, what kind of impression does this person give you when you meet them? And each actor will get up and introduce themselves and talk about themselves. You know, their 1-minute elevator speech. If you haven't done that, that's kind of an interesting thing to do. Be ready. And then all of those 3 adjectives get put into one full list, and the actor receives that list. So if you ask peers or teachers or casting directors what they see in you, that's what can happen in a shorthand version of what I'm talking about. Now the actor has a list of all of those adjectives of how they're being perceived by others. And guess what? If you like what you see and the adjectives are truthful and ring true for you, guess what? That's a quality that perhaps you'll be considered for in terms of casting. You see? Now, if there are some adjectives that you're not that crazy about, if someone says that you seem, I don't know, introverted or quiet or whatever, you can kind of come up with your own, that might not sit so well with you. And that's understandable. That doesn't mean you can't play those parts, but that means that you have the ability to shift into other personality traits that you might feel needs to be demonstrated. Okay, I can't say it any better than that. Because you have control in how you present yourself. You have control in how you present yourself personally, but you also have that kind of control with your headshots, for example. Your headshot must match that brand. Your reel should highlight your strongest qualities based on that brand. Even your social media presence feeds into your brand. I don't think, and this is a key point, I think, I don't think that you should really concern yourself or fight the perception of how you're being perceived. Does that make sense? I want you to guide it. I want you to shape it. I want you to feel that it's something that is within your control. And so expanding the brand, for example, really comes down to, once you're established, then and only then should you broaden your range strategically. You must have a solid foundation of roles before you can fight that typecasting stigma that might be placed on you. Here's an example. Bryan Cranston, for a long time, was known as the sitcom dad in Malcolm in the Middle. Hilarious. What a funny, well-developed character that not only could people relate to, but he was a little outside the norm, which made it even more entertaining. But guess what? Bryan rebranded himself into that darker, layered role in Breaking Bad. That's what I'm talking about. His ability to be established first and then take on the diversity of roles that were available, and him demonstrating his talent in playing those other kinds of parts really expanded his career in such an amazing way. So what am I saying here? Steering your brand doesn't mean staying locked in. It means knowing where to start. And once you have the start, then you'll know where you can stretch. Why this matters for new actors? If you resist being put in a box right away, right out of the gate, you're going to miss opportunities that might solidify your brand. You see, we have to know who you are first, and then challenge yourself and challenge the industry to look at you in varied ways. Because why? Casting wants clarity. They need to know how and where to place you. If I'm not sure if you belong in my project, then chances are you're not a good fit. But if there are qualities that you're bringing to that project that might really get you seen, get you noticed, and get you booked, that becomes a great foundation. Then you can start to strategize your next move. So here's a surprise factor. Early branding helps you book roles faster, even if they're similar at first. The key point, own your brand now so that you can evolve it later. Gosh, I hope that makes sense, because this is kind of a nuanced version, and why typecasting to me is a box that you're placed in, where brand is something you have control over. So here's my call to action. So honestly, do yourself a favor, forget typecasting. That's the old system. Think of your career as a brand, one that you steer, one that you guide, one that grows with you. The audience, casting directors, filmmakers, they aren't looking to trap you. They're looking to recognize you. And once they do, you're already ahead. So there you go. I hope that this has been helpful to you. Please do consider leaving me a like, a share, a thumbs up, especially on iTunes. If you found this episode at all useful to you, I could really use the shout outs, only because that's the only thing that feeds me. And I'm a little hungry right now. No, I'm kidding. Things are going great, but I would love for you to reinforce the value that these podcasts have, because I love doing them, and I would only continue to do them knowing that there are people out there who appreciate the effort that I'm making. So answer the question, what do people see in you? Share it with a friend, your teacher, or even message you. Please subscribe, like I said, and share the episode. I'm Jeffrey Dreisbach. You've been watching and listening Casting Actors Cast. We'll see you next time.
It's been great having you in our talent pool today. Your support means the world to us, so please consider sharing, liking, and reviewing this episode wherever you jump in. I'm Megan Grace Martinez. Thanks.
From monologues